Hi, it is Dr. Andrea Peters with Espresso Unicorn here for Humanity Over Hughes. As I start off, I want to give a PSA just so, those who don't know what Espresso Unicorn is, you get a little bit of that taste as you get ready to listen to our wonderful podcast today. So, Espresso Unicorn envisions a world where individuality thrives within a tapestry of shared humanity. Our apparel is a canvas of self expression, and our actions reflect our commitment to the human collective effort. We believe in the transformative power of education and strive to empower individuals through our philanthropic initiatives. Join the dialogue on our Humanity Over Hughes podcast as we explore critical topics and inspire change. Discover our initiatives and become a part of the change at expressounicorn.com and follow us on social media to stay connected. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and we're also on LinkedIn. So please give us a look, give us a follow, give us some of your dialogue. We'd love to know what you want to talk about. And even if you have ideas about clothing or other accessories that we could pull into the store that would be good for you and your friends, we'd love to hear from you. So thank you for joining us today. And so on our podcast today, so Humanity Over Hughes, we have the wonderful Joel Castellanos. And so Joel comes to us from Houston, Texas, and he is the founder and CEO of Cafe ZunZun. Joel has a rich background and just has a wonderful story to tell us. And so I would like Joel, if you don't mind, to give us a quick introduction of who you are and tell us about your family if you feel comfortable with doing that and kind of what your background is. Thank you for joining us, Joel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joel Castellanos, founder of Cafe ZunZun, coffee roaster from Houston, Texas, specifically outside of Houston. It's a city called Cypress. I was born in Cuba, Santiago de Cuba. My first language is Spanish, and I immigrated to Europe. My second language is French, and then I moved to the US. Uh, my background is I was at art school. I went to art school in Cuba, and then in France, how to cook and how to do pastries, pastry chef. And then I moved to the US and I started doing different things. And finally, moving to Texas, I started planning to start my coffee business and coffee roastery business. I love everything that is culinary. I grew up around food. Um, Families and friends always get together and sit at the table and eat and talk and laugh. So when I moved to France, I loved that aspect of life too, where people sit on the table and they share food and they talk and they enjoy their time. And kind of when I moved here, I wanted to kind of carry the same thing, sitting at the table and share food and talk. And I was kind of having living this life where every day go to work and do things and I wanted to change that a little bit. I really wanted to be with people and sitting at the table and converse and eat and in part that's where the business idea came from.
Joel, so what a rich story. And so I know when I read your bio, I was looking at Cuba to France to the US. And so some of my question is, and I believe you moved to Cuba when you were 18 or 19. Is
I,
that right?
I, I moved to France when I was 19 years old.
That's right, to France. I'm sorry, I said to Cuba. But yeah, so when you were 19 years old, that is a big move for a teenager. So you'll have to tell us a little bit about, why did you make that big move to France? And then also, as you look at getting into the coffee business, I want to say it was like 10 to 20 years after that. Where's the tie there with Cuba?
Well, the talking about Cuba is a very, very long story. I grew up in Cuba. I grew up in a communist country. Cuba was when I grew up in at that time in Cuba. Cuba was an extremely uh, closed communist country where the Cuban couldn't go out of the country. They were not allowed to go out of Cuba. The only way the Cuban couldn't go out of the country where was escaping from the country somewhere, taking a boat and leave, or getting out of the country through an invitation. Somebody invites you to another country, or getting married with somebody from another country, and get out of the Cuba. Now, when I left Cuba, there was something at that time that uh, the people that left Cuba without authorization, they were never allowed to come back to the country. If you leave the country, it's over. This is the country. It wasn't. They were not allowed to go back to the island. They didn't belong any longer to the island. So, and the people like me, I met a French lady, and we lived together for a year, and then we married, and I couldn't get out of the island that way, but I wasn't. It's a very long story because I got help to get out of the island. The government didn't want to give me authorization to leave the island. So, but I had some people from the French embassy that helped me to leave the island, and I wasn't. I I I left legally because the French helped me get all the paperwork to leave the island, but I wasn't allowed to go back to the island for 5 years. Just because I left legally, but I left in a way that they didn't like it, and so hey, you can come back here for 5 years. Cuba, we had a long tradition of drinking coffee. My family had they were from the countryside. They lived many years in the countryside. They had homes in the countryside, and they had land with coffee on it. And it was, normal for anyone that has, a land that has some coffee and harvest the coffee just for their own consumption. So, coffee was part of practically the way part of life, part of life. And we also had, when then my family moved to the city. I wasn't even born when I moved to the city. I was born in the city. And in the city, we had coffee shops, very, very old coffee shop, around 300 years old, 300 years old. They were they were founded at the beginning of the island. So, and then we were going to coffee shop, just, it was part of the life. And then when I moved to France, well, it's as new immigrant, you move to a new country, and you had to start life again. You had to you had to learn the language. Uh, I didn't know I didn't know any French, so I had to learn
But
French
you knew
from zero.
coffee.
Yeah, and then it's just a long story because you have to start from zero. New language, you couldn't do anything if you don't speak the language. So, and the process of learning the culture, the language, get integrated in the, with everybody. And then, when you are settled, or when you settle all that, it's just for the plan, when you start having very serious plan about where to direct your life.
Right. No, Joel, that's awesome. And so when you were talking about the coffee shops that were old, over 300 years old, right? I started thinking about kind of the history of Cuba. And what I found was it was saying that in the 18th century was really when coffee was brought over to Cuba by French colonizers. And then in the late 18th, or I'm sorry, the late 19th century, early 20th century was kind of the golden age, right? And that was when coffee really boomed in Cuba. And specifically, it still talks about, yes, Cuba had its revolution in 1959, and you had coffee producers that left the island, and there was kind of a limitation in how much coffee was being produced at that point in time. But still, in 2020, you guys were producing over 6,000 tons of coffee. And so that in itself shows the rich history of where coffee came from and where it continues to live and breathe in Cuba. And that's just amazing. And I'll tell you, before you and I had our discussion, I had no idea about that. And so that's amazing to now hear about your journey to France. And now you've connected the Caribbean to France, and you're actually there in France, and you mentioned that you were a pastry chef, and then you bring all of that back to the US. And so I'd love to hear about kind of your journey as you went to California for a little bit, and then you went to Texas, and now you reside in Texas with Cafe ZunZun. And like, how did that all come together for you to create this lovely cafe that, at least in my opinion, based off of our conversations, it's really building community within Texas, the area, Cypress, Texas, that you live in?
Well, let me just link the three countries. So so for for me, growing in a culture where we are extremely social people. We are extremely social. We go out. We go to see the neighbor when we need something. We knock at the door and we ask, "Do you have some sugar?" "Yes, I have some sugar." Hey, you know what? I don't have. I forgot to buy my milk today. Do you have some milk? "Yeah, I have some milk." And we grow up in a culture that is extremely social. You go out and outside, and you sit in with your neighbor outside. We have, in many houses where I grow up, we have like a small, in the front. A lot of houses has a patio in the middle, but in the front of the house we have like a small, like an entrance where you can sit outside.
You
So
talking
just
about
walk.
a
A
porch,
porch, yeah.
Joel?
We have a porch. A
Yeah.
porch, yes. You have a porch, yeah. And you see your neighbor, and you sit in the porch with your neighbor and to talk, and we share food. And it's just a extremely social culture. So then, moving to a place where it's not that social. It's social in a certain way, but not as social as we are. So I'm gonna give you an example. We we kiss each other. You see somebody that you know, or even sometimes people that you don't know, and you kiss them. And you can just talk, just start talking with anybody in the street, and people will spend time talking to you even if they don't know you. It's not the same. It's not the same in France. It's very hard to really engage into a conversation with somebody that you don't know, because they don't know you. They so, and there
Did
was
it
a few.
seem Did it
Hmm?
seem as though they were on guard in France? Is that the reason why they didn't socialize in that manner? Because they always talk about France as like the country of love and all of this stuff. So I thought, at least they would be a bit more social than what I'm hearing right now.
They are when you really know them. There is like cultural thing where people need to allow you to enter in their life and in their space. So until they don't allow you to enter in their life and in their space, you stay away from them. You can, it's no, but it's different now. But for us, in our culture, is different. Practically, we can open the door to anybody and everybody's welcome. We don't question anybody. It's just, it's practically, so when I moved there, and yes, it's you have a reduced number of friends because people don't open that easy. So, and practically, what you do, okay, let me create my own environment and my own my so of course, I start to create my own environment, inviting people, of course, French people that kind of, were open to, and I create my own space with the people that kind of were open to me and people probably have traveled a lot and were very open too. So so it used to say that I was carrying what the way I grow up, I carried to another place. And I didn't try to change anything in their place. I just opened myself to, and try to create my space and invite the other people that kind of had the same openness. And of course, when I moved here, I moved to California. It was kind of same thing. We even if people here are more open, way, way more open, but still, people were not that open like we are. So I say, well, let's organize some parties at the house. I did that in France too. Let me organize, parties. So when I say parties, it's just everybody bring food. I was telling everybody you prepare something very good, very unique, and we get together on Saturday. The only condition, if you had to bring a very unique plate from your culture, and but had to be made at home. I don't want anything from the supermarket.
Well, Joe, what if they couldn't cook?
Well, in that case, in that case, we say, hey, at least bring something good, something that is very good quality.
Right.
But we did that in France, where I started doing organizing gathering, where hey, we'll do something in our apartment this Saturday. The only condition is just bring something good, something very good, and but it had to be from your own culture, because I have people from different origins, from many nationalities. And the only thing had to be from your own culture. So we started doing that in France, and then we moved here, and I started doing the same thing here, and up to a point where we had then the friends inviting their friends, and
Good, good.
and we
What
went.
about in Texas? When you guys moved to Cyprus, how was that?
Then when we moved here, practically we moved here, and we had with my wife job and moved her here. So, and I say, well, here I totally changed my mentality and say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna focus. I was raising my daughter, and she was in her teenage years, and it required a little bit more attention. uh, I decided to focus more on her education and be sure that she's gonna grow um, in a way that it's appropriate for for the society we're living in, and making sure that that she could go to the university and get a good education, and I focus on that. And then when she left to the college, she graduated. She went to study in Canada. She moved to Canada, and then I say, well, now is the time to start doing things.
Did you always want a cafe?
Um, yes, we want, I wanted to open, it's about socialization all the time. It's about socializing, getting together. You see the same pattern, in Cuba, socially, getting together in France, getting people together in California. So it was the same idea. How can we do something where people can get together, socialize, and have a good time? And not necessarily about alcohol. I don't drink alcohol, but it's necessarily, just getting together and talk and share experience and share food. And for me and my wife, that was extremely important because food is a very, you can see culture through food. And food is an important part of every human. Every culture cook different, even with the same ingredient, but the food is different. And for us, doing something about around food and about people getting together and talk about their life and their culture was very important. Of course, here in Texas, I say, well, we should open just something. And but what? Uh,
So, so what I'm hearing is the different cultures. So the culture that you were raised in, the culture that you went to in France and you created, then the culture that you continue to create in California. Then when you came to Texas, that culture was a bit foreign again in this space. And now that your daughter is off in college, you have time and space to create something that was a little bit different than what you saw in the environment. And I'd have to imagine that there was a bit of anxiety and stress before you truly took that leap to create this cafe. And so I'd love for you to kind of talk about, the things that went through your mind, maybe even some of the challenges that you had with starting your cafe, and then kind of how is it doing now?
there is always anxiety when um in everything you do. Uh, I remember the first, I grew up in a country was extremely controlled. Uh, it's extremely controlled where you couldn't talk, you couldn't have a conversation because everybody was spying on everybody. You didn't know who worked for the government. And if you said something wrong, you could end up in jail. If you say something different, that something that the government didn't like, you could end up in jail. So you grow up in a way where you are you don't speak freely all the time because the environment where you grow doesn't allow you to express yourself openly because you can end up in jail. When I moved to France, there's always anxiety because you go to a new place where you don't know anybody. You don't know if the people will accept you. You know how the people will treat you. You don't know. So there is anxiety on, on moving to a new place. The same thing, there's always anxiety. I moved from moving from France to California. What's going to happen in California? I don't know anybody. How the people are going to treat me? As a black person, how the people are going to treat you? I, you know, and you always have anxiety to the new place you go. But but I always in my mind say I will adapt. You find ways to whatever come to you, you will find a way to adapt. You know, in California, moving to Texas was the same thing. Specifically, people in California, Are you crazy? Are you moving to Texas? You live in California to move to Texas. Those
Wait,
people
wait.
there,
What I've heard is everything bigger and better in Texas. Is that not true?
everything is big here, but have been living here for 18 years now. And of course, it's now that a lot of people are moving to Texas. But before, most of the people I knew, the people I know in California, are you lose your mind? Are you moving to Texas? Those places are very racist places. That's the South. This is the South of the U.S. What are you going to do over there? This is this is. So, of course, of course, those people never lived here, but for us, it's part of the routine. You go to, we grow up with anxiety, in the place we were born. Uh, and then, moving to Texas, hey, I'm moving to Texas, and whatever happened in Texas, we're gonna adapt and we're gonna deal with it. So, and and that's what it is. I moved to Texas, and Texas is fine. Texas is like any other places, and but there is a way anxiety and everything you do, and including when I decide to open the business, it's a big, big, big commitment, a big, big decision. And that gives you a tons of anxiety because it's a big commitment, financial commitment. And there is a lot of unknown, and that gives you a lot of stress and anxiety. But I mean, it's part of you can escape that. You can escape that part of anxiety, and you are not, no, I will not say scared, because if you say scared, you don't do anything. But that internal stress that you have, and that is there, it's there. You need to find a way to control it.
You're right. Every place you go, there's a little bit of anxiety, especially if you've never been there before. And I think what was so unique about what you said, so many people will tell you what this new place is going to be, even though they've never lived there, right? But it's a preconceived notion about what you're going to face. And don't get me wrong, there's bad people everywhere,
Yes,
and we know the history of America, and the South is often pinned with racism and et cetera. And it's true, it's there, right? But the reality is racism was across the US. It wasn't just in the
yes,
South. It was just more
correct.
pronounced in the South. So I commend you for going and starting Cafe ZunZun in Texas. Now, one of the things
Well,
that
let
I
me
kind
give
of
you
want to go ahead.
just one little thing.
Hmm.
When I left Cuba, some member of my family told me, why are you going to that place? Why are you going to France?
Hmm.
You know, why are you going there? Why are you moving to that place? What are you gonna do over there? Do you know how there are those people? Do you know those people? You know, and I mean, it's for me, it's the same pattern, and the same pattern happened in France. Are you moving to the US? It's it's so it's it's the same pattern.
It's human nature, right? People hate change. That's the first thing. They're fearful of change, and then they'll be fearful for you too because you're changing.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So, no, that's awesome. So, this quarter, what we're talking about in doing in Espresso Unicorn is about environmental sustainability. And, it's really set within that space of us trying to do our part as a clothing brand, but then also as volunteers and people with a heart for philanthropy. And so, what I'd like to kind of turn this conversation to is where you see yourself, because that's one of the reasons why we brought you on, Joel, is one, you have a wealth of knowledge about starting your own business and specifically a coffee business, but you didn't just start a coffee business, you started a coffee business that is environmentally conscious. And for those who don't know, if you haven't gone to the website, and Joel, I'd love for you to share your website with us too. Um, Cafe ZunZun only uses organic beans from organic producers. And so, if you can kind of venture into that space, why that was a decision for you, and kind of what your experience has been thus far with using organic producers.
Well, it's everything for me is long story. Organic, first for everything is based on health for me, on health for myself, my family, and the health of the place where we live, which is this planet. And I know for some people this is not important, but I know, I grow up in places where they were extremely green and very clean and no trash around and and eating healthy food and just going to a place where you say, wow, there is no trees here. What happened here? Where this the food is, it's just packaging with the there is 20 million ingredient on it, with ingredient that you don't even know what it means. You don't even know what it is. And seeing, people with cancer, so many cancers, so many problems, and so many misery, and and you see that there is a problem. You can feel there is a problem. You just, it's, unless you are blind, if you see careful, there is a problem. So, so and for me, normally, we were eating super healthy, healthy. We cook every meal at home. So for us, was extremely important, whatever we will be eating, uh, it had to be healthy for our body. And so we want to do the same, when we open the cafe, open something that is healthy for the people that are consuming it. But at the same time, we didn't want to be consuming things crazily and damaging the planet. We didn't want to be buying things from places that are practically creating more problem than they think that they are solving problems, but they're creating more problems than they are solving problem. So that was the basic of for us, the base for us to do something that was environmentally friendly, and we included that in everything we did in the business, everything, the building, and to the sourcing of the coffee had to be sourced from producers that are not damaging the environment. Um, I don't know if I explain myself, but
No, no, I think I get what you're saying. So bottom line is you chose to take a step in the direction of doing everything within the space of environmental sustainability, environmental compliance, and just ensuring that whatever you were doing was not negative to the environment, or at least you were reducing whatever negative effects that were there. So not just the coffee beans, but even the bags that they're in, even the building that you sit in. Me
correct.
being an engineer, we talk about LEED certified buildings. And so it's ensuring that it has the right type of lighting, the type of materials that you're using. So
Correct.
yeah, Joel, completely understood. And, and that is a massive undertaking to actually do, especially when it's like, hey, I'm just doing a coffee business and it's an organic coffee business. But no, you went full tilt and said, hey, everything from the ground up is going to be environmentally conscious and
Yes,
approached in that manner.
yes, and you are correct. Actually, uh, the building is a sustainable building, is a prefab building. The lights are LED lights. The bags that we use are compostable bags. We have a place on the building where you can, we don't mix all the trash. There is a compostable side and there is a trash side. Of course, we try to do that at the business. The city doesn't do that, but we did, we say, well, the city don't do it, but we will do it at least to, at least, to, it's in a certain way you are educating without saying it. I know the city don't recycle, but it doesn't matter. We'll recycle here. Environmental friendly. Our syrups, our syrup, we don't have, we have just a few syrup and they are organic. I know we have a little problem with that because some people want certain syrup, but they have too many chemicals. And but we don't want to have that in our shop. We don't. That's not what we want to support. And for everything we have inside the building, I will say, most of even the roaster that we use, the roaster is energy efficient roaster. So everything we decide to use had to be environmental friendly, and it had to be uh, at least something you consume had to be healthy for you and for my customers.
Yeah. So our last conversation, we talked about how choosing to have an organic coffee business, organic roastery, has not been easy because the coffee business system is not set up to truly thrive in that space or of the organic side. And you share with us some of the friction that you have experienced trying to create this environmentally compliant store and roastery, and let's leave it there. Talk to us about some of the hurdles and friction that you've had to deal with creating an organic business like what you have.
Well, it's there is many things. I'm gonna give you an example. For example, I cannot be cert I would like to certify my business as an organic coffee roaster, certify, but it is so expensive. It is so expensive that practically I abandon and I don't want to certify because it just costs too much. And the same thing for in the producer side. Uh, the producers, most of the producer, a lot of producers, they don't use fertilizer. They don't, because they don't have the money to pay for those fertilizer, those chemicals. So, but they cannot say that their coffee is organic because they had to pay for the certification for them to be able to say, to have the logo that is organic. And that certification costs a lot of money. So even if the coffee is organic, even if the one that have the money, and they pay for the certification, and we buy a lot of coffee from those. But even if that coffee is organic, certified, when that coffee come to my shop, I can just show you that the coffee is certified, but I cannot put the logo organic in my bag as an organic certified coffee. If I want to do that, I have to pay for it a lot of money. the producer pay for it, and then I had to pay for it too. So practically most people that want to do organic, they abandon it to have that certification because it's just too expensive.
So if you can tell me, and I'm going down a rabbit hole here, who's getting all this money? Who benefits from this money that comes in from these certifications?
It's the association the association that give that say organic US Day organic. They are the one that get the money. It's practically yeah, it's to make money. It's an
Yeah,
association to
and
make
that's
money.
unfortunate, right? Like people are trying to do the right thing for the environment and trying to do the right thing for their bodies. And we are met with extremely high prices for products and or like you were saying, certifications where you're officially seen as an organic business. And that's unfortunate that we're not welcoming that in a bit better where we can have more people flood our market and do the right thing so we're actually putting good quality products in our bodies. That's so unfortunate. And so, from there, I want to dive into your actual producers, right? So you were talking about that as well. Like you're using international producers and what are you finding as some of your challenges there with these small companies, outside of not being able to pay for the certification?
Well, one of the let me just to say something. Organic coffee, we know we buy a specialty coffee. And a specialty coffee is different than commercial coffee. Specialty coffee kind of represent around 5%, I believe like around 5% of the entire production of coffee. Then organic coffee may represent like 1% of the production of coffee. So there is not a lot organic as in a specialty coffee. So we're practically the producer that can supply organic and a specialty coffee. There is not a lot. So it's just like a 1% of the whole entire production of coffee. So the some of the difficulty for for all the producers, especially small producers, is to get paid uh, the, the the correct amount of money for them to sustain their farm, their business. And it's very hard for them to really uh, make enough money uh, to really do well. They to survive. So is the it's that's a big it's very difficult for them to survive. To live correctly, to live decently.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Okay.
why? Because it's the whole system is made in a way where the producer don't get paid correctly. So they are practically abusing them practically,
Hmm.
specifically the small producers. But most people
Yeah.
don't see that. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, most people don't see that. And while people were sipping their coffee, they're not thinking about who are the hands, right, that actually produce this to put it in
Yeah.
the bags and bring it to the U.S. Because as you and I talked about earlier, there are no coffee beans, right, that are being
Yes.
harvested here in the U.S. So it has to come from international locations for us to drink the coffee that we drink. So yeah, wow. And so again, I commend you for taking this charge to decide to not just have a coffee business, but to have a coffee business that is environmentally responsible for both the environment and for our own bodies. Now,
Yeah.
I
Well,
guess Hmm.
Yeah, now one of the things that we, as a small roaster, something that we contribute is where we contribute is that we buy those coffee directly from producers. There is a way an intermediary or two intermediaries, but practically the I negotiate the price with the price with the producers. So the producer kind of know the market. I know kind of the market, and we kind of find a middle ground where we can like, hey, I can buy your coffee for that amount of money. That way I can sell it. And the producer get paid a certain amount of money that that they say, hey, this is correct according to the market, and nobody's abusing me. So of course, there is a way middle companies that had to make money, but you can escape those companies. You have to pay the government to export your coffee, you have to pay transportation, there's a lot of things that you have to pay. No matter what, that you can escape that unless unless you're a very rich company and have control of all the chain, the chain from the point A to point B. But the thing is, for us, I can talk directly with the producer, talking about the price and find the middle ground and buy their coffee in a way that we all benefit.
So to kind of leapfrog from that, what we always want to do on this show is understand how we as consumers can help in your charge, right? So you've taken up this great mission to have an organic roastery, right? And to have organic coffee being made for people that come to Cafe ZunZun. And as we've already heard here, it is not an easy process. And what I want to know and what I want to share with our listeners is how can we get involved? How can we support this cause? Because I don't know who doesn't love coffee out there, right? But like most of us drink coffee. And so, if it's something that we already love and we know that we're going to consume it, then how can we consume a higher quality coffee while also helping the environment and helping you and other people like you who are in this organic coffee business continue to exceed and continue to progress forward?
Well, this is a very, very important question. How can people support how can people support, how can you support? Um, One of the way I can see where people can contribute to support something. Uh, First, if you go to a coffee shop, you have to ask the employee or ask the owner, ask them about the coffee, where the coffee comes from. If they know where the coffee comes from, if ask them question, what's the variety of coffee, where the coffee come from, who are the producers? Um, Ask question. Um, Another thing is you want to support also uh, small coffee shop. Just people need to stop consuming all these big chains, and there's too many chain. People need to stop consuming coffee in all those big chains because they are not supporting the small producers, and they are not contributing to the place where they live, because when you are consuming coffee in all this big chain, you are not supporting those very unique shop that you want a neighborhood with very unique shop with very unique things. And you don't want to see the same franchise everywhere, same box everywhere. So, just who are the owner, what's the mission behind the business, and where to buy the coffee. And some things that people need to ask. It's important to know what's the mission behind the business. The people that create the business, what they have in their mind. What is the they just want to make money, or they or they have a big mission than that, a bigger mission than that. So, and it's important for the customer to inquire about, you know, the business where they wanted, they are spending the money, not just spending the money, even if it is $4, if it is $5. But who are you spending that money? And I think it's that's the first thing to do.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is conscious consumerism, right? So actually caring about the products that you are buying and where they're coming from. And, I think at least in America for sure, we live such busy lives that we don't slow down often to figure that out. We don't look at the small places because it takes a little bit more effort to actually understand what they have and what they don't have. It's easy to go to a Walmart, right? It's easy
Yes.
to go to a Starbucks, and its convenience. And at least in America, what we can see consistently, because we do live in such a fast society, is that if it's not convenient, most people don't want to do it. So no, thank you for those three things that and actionable things that people can start doing right now. I
Yeah.
think that's critical.
Yeah. No, one of the thing is, we keep complaining about these big corporations and the money that keep going to the same place. But at the same time, as what can you do? What can you do? And there's not too many things you can do, but there is one simple thing that you can do. It's just anything you spend it on spend the money on places where that they are doing good, or people that will treat you good, and or people that are doing good, or people that will treat you good and treat you well. Spend the money where you have to spend the money, but don't spend the money everywhere, because maybe you are spending the money in one place, and those places where you spend the money, if those places are hurting you at the same time. You keep spending the money in those places, but those places are hurting you. But it's important to redirect the money to the correct places.
As we like to say, vote with your feet, right? So, if they're not treating you right or not, they don't have good business practices, then you spend your money elsewhere. You take your feet somewhere else, versus coming in there, even if it's convenient, right? So,
Yes,
but
exactly.
that,
Even if it's convenient,
yeah, but that
and
takes a perspective change, right?
yes, it is important. I think it's extremely important. It's extremely important that people be aware of what they spend the money, because with the money you're spending, you can even be complice crime, and you don't know.
Right.
You can be complice of crime, big crime, and you don't know, but you're just spending the money, but you're supporting those corporations, you're supporting
Yeah.
those crime. So, and that's extremely important to be aware where you spend the money.
Hmm. No,
Yeah.
that's great. So what I'd like to ask, because you have taken this leap of faith, right, into this very special business. And I told you before, I can't wait until I can come into a Cafe ZunZun and have my cup of coffee. So if someone was out there listening, right now, and they have a desire to have a cafe one day. Or what would you recommend? Just one thing. What's the primary thing that you would recommend to that person to ensure that they do as they look to start this business?
Uh, Fourth thing is money. There is no secret in it. The fourth thing is if you're a couple, be sure that one of them has stable job. Somebody has a job that is secure. That way, the other one can start the business and still have the financial support just in case something happens with the business. But you have to have somebody that has somebody has an income and the other one is out the business because you cannot just both you cannot just start a business and then thinking about we're gonna be making money enough to sustain the family. No, that doesn't work that way. You have to have somebody already making the money and somebody that will take the risk.
But I think that is great advice because I know there's a lot of talk out there from positive psychology people who talk about burn the boats and sink the ships and don't look back and et cetera, et cetera. And I love that mindset, right? Because that means to commit to it and go full force into whatever this thing that is your passion. But the reality is there is a great risk of starting a business. And that business, the first 2 years of that business for sure, are the hardest 2 years of any new business owner's experience, right? And so, not to have stable income is a risk that also increases the psychological risk for that person as well. Right.
Yes,
And so, like, I agree with that mindset, but to a certain extent. And I think for me, that certain extent is based off of what is your experience in that space? What type of mentors do you have? And then what type of liquidity do you have sitting there to help support you throughout that time frame? So Joel, you're spot on. I appreciate that because what you're giving is truth and not just flowers and unicorns for people who are looking to start something of their own, which I commend them for looking at it, but we also have to do it logically. So thank you for that.
yes, yes. You have to be realistic and prepared. It's not like, I'm gonna jump on it and just to start. No, you
Hmm.
have to plan for it. You have to plan for it, and
Absolutely.
it doesn't mean that, everything you have in your plan is gonna work, but at least, if you have a plan, a business plan, at least it will guide you, help you to, okay, what is in the first step, the second step, and third, and it
Hmm.
will guide you,
Right.
and you have to have the financial aspect
Hmm.
very clear. It's extremely important to have the financial aspect very
Yeah.
clear, the costs and the risk, and it will give you the stress at the beginning to see all that, but at least you are prepared. At least you can plan
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this has been a wonderful conversation and, something that's near and dear to my heart because I love some coffee. When you were talking about back in Cuba, how, it was a part of your culture. As I shared with you, it was a part of my family culture. I remember my dad getting up most mornings, as we were getting up groggy, getting ready for school, what we always smelled was the coffee, right? Because my dad always had the coffee percolating. And I remember us always asking my mom and dad, hey, can we have coffee? Can we have some coffee? And they would always say no. It's like, no, it'll stunt your growth. And so finally, when we got to the age where we could have coffee, I won't say I fell head over heels for coffee, but I did like it. We didn't go to coffee shops because we just couldn't afford it in my
Mm,
family, but that coffee was definitely brewing in the house. And where I think I really started loving coffee was in college when I had to pull all-nighters to study for
mhm,
tests or to get some
mm.
projects done. And then that's when I really started, loving coffee and coffee and being able to put like, and I know you already said you shouldn't put all these additives in, but I love to put my milk and, and some of my sugar, additives in it. But yeah, so I am a fan of coffee, and this was just a great conversation, and not just about coffee, but really about culture and about environmental sustainability. And so, on behalf of Espresso Unicorn and Humanity Over Hughes, I just want to thank you for being our guest today, and I look forward to future conversations with you because I do think that we probably have some more stuff to talk about, especially as it relates to Cuba and truly the history of how coffee came to be in Cuba and the ties with coffee and slavery and the Atlantic slave trade. And, that gets into some deeper, more serious conversations. But again, all of it goes back to culture and just the beautiful diversity of our countries that are out there. And I'd
Well,
like to
thank
give you the last words. Any last words from you, Joel? Anything that you want to leave with the audience? The floor is yours, sir.
well, it was great to participate to this podcast, and I don't I know it's a podcast, but it was great, a great great thing. Um, I'm if people hear the podcast, I would like then if you have any questions, to ask, that they can email you. I will try to answer those questions.
And Joel, can you share with our audience the your website for Cafe ZunZun?
Yes, the website is cafezunzun.com. So cafe, ZUN.com. So cafezunzun.com. Very simple.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. And just like Joel said, if you have questions, if you have advice or maybe even some thoughts about what Joel and I have talked about today, please get online at expressounicorn.com, and that is expressounicorn.com, and you can go into the space for account, and that will link you into the account for Espresso Unicorn, but you'll also be able to send me a message, and that's the way that you can communicate with me. And if there's any questions, concerns, or thoughts about our discussion today or anything else, please jump on there, and we look forward to talking with you. Okay, but that's all today for Humanity Over Hughes, and we thank you for joining us. Thank you again, Joel.